everyone. My name is Tandazani Dlakama. I'm the curator for education and public programming here at the National Gallery. Today for our Harare Conversations program, we're very excited to be able to focus on fashion, designing local and global, and we're going to hear from three wonderful experts who are doing wonderful things in the fashion industry. So today we have Paida Moyo, whose brand is Demoyo. Upon her New York arrival and determined to learn and succeed in the fashion realm, she apprenticed for Carolina Herrera, Calvin Klein, and the likes of Ralph Lauren, where she learned to refine her eye for vintage, style, eloquence, and demure. Now mature and ready to entrance the world with her own style, she has created Demoyo, from the heart, which encapsulates her perspective of the fashion world and her efforts to give back to a world that is in desperate need of healing. This designer not only has a vision, but genuinely works on infusing help into the infrastructures of suffering economies by not only being eco-conscious, but by creating jobs where jobs are needed right in the heart of the problem. Sourcing locally in Africa. Can you give Demoyo a hand? Our second panelist is Shamiso Catherine Rujizo. She's the founder and director of Catherine Ru's Agency, a modeling and image management agency. In 2013, she launched Fashion Week in Zimbabwe, which showcases developing and established local talent. She also established Kusika Design Center, which is based in Duna State, the design district in Harare. Kusika is a hub that supports the economic development of small businesses in the fashion and design sector. As if that is not enough, Catherine is the regional director of programs for another local foundation. Photo Mobile. Yes. Okay. Can you give Catherine a hand for being here? And then our third panelist is Tafazo Moyo. His brand is Kid Hunter. Kid Hunter was founded in 2015. It's a Harare-based menswear label which focuses on continuously supplying its consumers with great quality, fresh and unique ready-to-wear garments with fine detailing and overall great designs. Kid Hunter is focused on empowering the next generation as well as instilling courage that would eventually make them stand out among the crowd as being fearless, bold, and brave. And as such, their energies to go into the world and follow their various dreams till they are fulfilled. Can we give Tafazo a hand today? So I'm going to ask each panelist to walk us through their journeys from how they began and where they are today. And to start off with, we have Paida Moyo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Guys, let's support each other a little more. Can I get a round of applause, please? Thank you. Thank you, Tandazani, for such a wonderful introduction. As you were saying, my name is Paida Moyo Judea Majandu, and I am a creator first, an artist second, and a designer third. So I'm going to start out, though, guys, by saying I'm not the best public speaker, so I'm going to ask you all to get really intimate with me, okay? Because I'm going to take you on my personal journey. And when I take you on my personal journey, it means I have to get very vulnerable with you and let you know, my ups and my downs and my ins and my outs and the things that make me who I am. So I need you to just hang tight, enjoy the ride, and enjoy my story, okay? So I'm a typical girl, typical Zimbabwean girl, born here in Harare, and I've had the privileged experience of living in several countries abroad. So when I was 17 years old and I happened to live in London, my high school teacher was like, "So, Pai, what are you doing with yourself?" And I was like, Mr. McFarland, he was Scottish. I was like, I'm going to law school. And he goes, law school? He was my art teacher. Law school? And I said, yes, of course. What else? And he goes, you're an artist, Pai. Don't forget who you are. And when he said that, but he shook me, by the way, and this is a man that was like 6 foot tall, very, very big, and I was much skinnier than I am right now. But when he told me these things, when he said you're an artist, it literally changed the trajectory of my life. And when he said you're an artist, I was like, that must mean there's something I can do with my creativity, right? And so as a result, when I graduated from high school, I dropped the law for a minute. And I moved to Paris. And I had a wonderful learning experience by doing my foundation year there. And the very first runway show that I saw was Valentino, of all people, you know. And so, as a young 18-year-old girl, I'm watching this incredible icon with his clothes flowing down the runway, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. That's what I want to do. And I finished my year in Paris, and guess what Pai went on and did? She moved back to London, and she did that law degree that she put aside. So it was a very painful experience for me, but I didn't know how much I would actually need that law, so I'm extremely grateful that I went ahead and I did the law degree, because it really helps me in my day-to-day runnings of my business. And so, 3 years of law in London, and I'm so done with that, and I decided to pack my bags and move to New York City, with ever more determined now, because I was like, yeah, now I really know that I want to be a designer. So once I was in New York City, I went to a school called Parsons School of Design. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of it, but it's quite a good school. So they trained us quite well, but that experience within itself was out of this world. And the reason for that was I got to apprentice for the best of the best in the world. People like Carolina Herrera, Michael Kors. I worked for Calvin Klein, and I worked for Ralph Lauren Blue Label. And so that is an experience money really cannot buy. But every designer's dream is to have your own label, right? You want your own baby that you can say, you know, I want to be my own Valentino. So after about 10 years of experience in New York and LA, I moved to Toronto essentially to be with family. And while I was there, I got the inkling that I was finally ready to start my own brand. And so when I started this baby, I started off by calling the brand Pai de Moyo Judea. And it sounds very exotic. It sounds like, okay, maybe it could even sound Japanese or something. But my PR agent at the time was like, why don't you, make it more catchy? And I said, you know what, let me think about it, because people tend to butcher your name. But she was right, because De Moyo is so catchy. The name itself is just like boom. And so I got rid of the Pai, and I called the brand De Moyo, which is the rest of my name anyway. So while I was in Toronto, I believe I did a good 10 shows. Had a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous experience. But I was also blessed because maybe it was also my readiness and also my experience from New York and LA that helped me to be placed on that Toronto map so quickly. And it happened very, very, very fast in the space of 2 years. So I just want to share a little bit about my brand, and then I'm going to tell you about that international experience within itself, and then I'm going to tell you about my local experience. All right? So here we go. So De Moyo is a little manifestation of my heart's desire. Anything that is created from the heart, from De Moyo, from Moyo Wako, from Moyo Wangu, will have authenticity, it will have integrity, it will have compassion, it will have true creativity, and also staying power. Emphasis in my work, in each collection, is on fashion-forward silhouettes with a focus on bold colors or accents, vintage-inspired trims, and feminine nuances, particularly for the ladies. Catering to a wide variety of female shapes and concentration on fabric, intricate detail, and subtle but excellent fitting garments. De Moyo ensures that the customer enjoys a luxurious, enlightening, and fashionably tantalizing experience. That would be me. Guys can clap here. Thank you. I tried. Okay. So when I was looking at my branding, and when I was really just searching my soul to figure out why am I doing this? Why do I want to be a designer? And also when I looked at the local market, the international market while I was out there, I found that it was extremely saturated. Although I managed to showcase at places like Toronto Fashion Week, and I got lots of accolades, got lots of exposure, and even, buyers approached me and I managed to sell a lot of clothes out there, it still wasn't enough for me. So I decided, if I'm gonna do anything, especially where it comes to my creativity, I need to do it with purpose. I need to do something that's gonna have an impact on other people's lives, especially because I've had such a blessed experience and existence, experience that truthfully, you cannot buy this type of experience. So I do not take it lightly, and I take it with great responsibility. And as a result, this is now my brand purpose and why I do what I do. And I'm just gonna read this out for you guys. And again, in a world that is in desperate need of healing, Demoyo is a socially conscious brand that aims at sourcing here locally, thereby infusing money and currency into local infrastructures and creating jobs in the long run while promoting self-sufficiency and economic independence. This powerful tool is achieved by hiring local women and men as well, I'm not sexist, who are invariably highly creative to become part of this emerging creative force. Guys, you can clap there too. Thank you. So let me just go back to the international scene very quickly, because when you have a good PR agent and when you have a brand that can speak for itself, people will naturally gravitate to you. So this is a picture of a Hollywood actress wearing Demoyo, and her name is Gabrielle Miller. Thank you. And I just want to talk about that in that global context, that the fashion industry out there is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so this is what comes with that when your stuff is together and your brand is together. You get your exposure. Your clothes will naturally be in magazines. The press itself will contact you and let you know that, okay, you're either doing a good job or you're not. You get lots of business. So buyers contact you and they place orders on your clothes. And then you get, like I said, you get great PR, especially if your brand is intact and in order. So these are some of the benefits. You get high levels of international exposure. Now, locally, it's a slightly different scene. Our local industry is a little bit, for lack of a better word, what can I say? Challenging. I was gonna say dead, but I didn't want to say that. Yeah, exactly. It's possible, but challenging. Our industry has actually completely shut down. We could be doing so much more with it. But going back to the purpose part of it, this is why I decided to come back home and use all of my skill set, my expertise, everything that I've learned, to try and bring that all back, and maybe to inspire a few people and say you can do exactly what I've done and more. Okay. And here's just an example of some of the big, we've got Maclean's Magazine, we've got the Global News, we've got CBC, we've got the Huffington Post, we've got several different media platforms that they place you on as a result. And again, on a national basis, locally, it just doesn't happen like that. It's really quite challenging. So the end goal, though, as a fashion designer, right, is for you to have your Valentino moment, where you have your clothes showing on the runway, you have your excellent finishes, you have your cohesive collection, and you have your models. And at the very end of it, you walk down and it is really the moment that we all work for, right? And dreams do come true. So I moved back here, back home, 4 years ago. And I have to share with you and let you know that the struggle has been real. And Shamiso knows a lot of my struggle, and I think we've actually walked down these paths together. I'll just share perhaps one experience in terms of the struggle, guys. Okay, so after maybe 14 years experience internationally, I came home and I was like, I can do it too. So I approached, Shamiso actually had one of her showcases which I took part in. And then the wonderful thing about that showcase is that she had actual fashion buyers at this event. So we were all extremely excited about that, and we had a runway show and all this. And then one of the buyers actually asked me, and she said, so how much would it cost if I ordered 2,000 units of that piece? And I was like, woo, yes, it's happening. And I said, you know what, how about we talk about it over coffee or whatever on Monday? So Monday comes, I'd given her my business card and she gave me hers. And then I call her, she doesn't pick up the phone. And then I email her, she doesn't pick up the phone. And then I stalk her on Facebook, add her on Facebook. She accepted the request, but long story short, it took about a month for her to actually respond to me after that. And that was really frustrating for me because I was like, but wait a minute, I have the goods. I actually have the talent. I know how to create good garments. I'm trying to make a difference. I came home to do this, and these people are literally ignoring me. So what do I do about this, right? So eventually, I did manage to get into that store, and it's a very big store in this country, locally. The unfortunate thing, though, is that a store with 66 national stores, for a young designer such as myself, they'll only order something like 14 units at a time. So how does that then sustain my business, right? How can I actually run a business in this way? So that was something that caused a huge challenge to me personally, because especially when it comes to orders, if they order those 14 units, it's not like they give you money to facilitate that order. And on the national front, just locally, we know that money is a problem. Just cash flow is a problem. So once I got that order of 14 units, I did wait my 60 days and I was finally paid by the company, by that store. And the experience was wonderful within itself, but then I thought, how am I gonna survive? This is really, really, really difficult. And I decided on the local front, I thought to myself, what is the one thing that companies always need? And so I like to consider myself a high-end, luxurious fashion designer. That's what I like to consider myself. But practically, on the ground, that is not gonna put food on my table at all. Because if I'm lucky, maybe one person a week will come, especially at my price point, because I can tell you and just be very honest with you that when I was in Canada and in New York, wherever I was, I would charge $400 per dress with no shame, and people would pay up front and I would just ship my dress and it was great. But here locally, I couldn't do the same thing, so everything had to be restructured according to where I was. Another huge challenge for me, but that's okay. Not only that, the fashion industry itself is not taken as seriously as it is anywhere else, so that's a huge challenge as well. Because a lot of times people will look at me and be like, oh, you're a tailor. What can you tailor for me, right? And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. Anyway, price point is something that proved to be quite a big challenge for me as well. So what I thought was, how am I actually going to make this thing survive? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to make my brand last? How am I going to do it with integrity as well? And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to branch out a little bit. And I realized that, you know, people do spend money on clothes, but companies, per se, always have budgets for clothes. So I branched out and I started to do a lot of corporate wear. And so a lot of people know that Demoyo does corporate clothes. This is a lot of what we do. And then if I have a young lady or young man that wants a fabulous garment, that high-end fabulous garment that I mentioned before, they do know where to find me, and then I make some beautiful clothes for them when I can. But it's about really surviving in this environment at the moment. Okay. And so also, speaking to that, my brand, I think, has survived locally. Remember, like I said before, you can hire a PR agent that will just get the word out there and everyone will know who you are in the space of 27 minutes, no doubt. And the editor of a magazine will be sitting on the front row of your catwalk. But we don't have that here. We don't have that exposure. We don't have that networking. We don't even have that industry. So the only way, really, when I came home, after 23 years of being away, no one knew who I was. Zero, nobody. And so I literally went garment by garment, and I made something for you, then I made something for her, then I made something for him, and then by word of mouth, people slowly got to know who I was. And I think that's a general truth for most people around us. It's just like Shamiso might refer me to someone, or I might refer her to someone, or I might be like, House of Stone is the best designer I know here locally. Go to that night, Vika. And that's how, our environment is just very close-knit and tight. So we don't have the same perks, I guess. And hopefully within time, though, we will build, it's up to us, isn't it? To just make sure that we start building that industry, and we have so much talent that can actually make it happen, but it just takes togetherness and focus. And so, yeah, that is one of the weaknesses of just us here in Zimbabwe, that, we don't have an industry anymore, particularly because in the 80s, Zimbabwe was one of the leading manufacturers in the world. And you guys all look like you were born in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, late 90s. Oh my goodness, so you wouldn't know this information. Yes, we used to be quite amazing. So unfortunately though, our industry is not what it used to be, but I've taken it upon myself, along with people like Nanai, Tafadzwa, Shamiso, to bring it back. Another thing, I just want to talk about the local structure as well. We don't have a governing body that we can go to and be like, look, I'm having this fashion challenge, for example. Because in Toronto, they have this whole thing called the Fashion Incubator. And that's where you go. They have libraries, they have everything you can possibly think of to do with fashion. They even have loan facilities and things like that. And I'm just hoping that sooner or later we'll be able to develop something like that for ourselves in time, right? And of course, certainly we will get there. And the demise of the local manufacturing industry left us with an entire black hole, meaning that there was a gap, like there's actually nothing, and it's up to us to fill that gap now. So that's why we're here actually having this conversation. So very grateful to the National Gallery for giving us this platform. This is the moment. Okay, so for me, like I said, it's a lot more than just making pretty things, but I thought for those who may want to be designers, it's my pleasure to share with you through a lot of my struggles, how do we then set up like a successful design infrastructure? And I won't go into detail about it too much, but what we want to do, for me anyway, we want to, I won't say we want to, I have focused on things such as customer service, okay? Because that's something that we lack here at home. making sure that your customer is extremely happy and satisfied with the product, and you not feeling like you're entitled to their money, because what you're doing is you're actually working for that money in exchange for that product, which is something that's very, very important. And it's something that I think we tend to lack and we forget about and we don't think about enough. So I've made one of my most important attributes as a design house to make sure that my customer is happy enough that they always want to come back. And making sure that their experience is so good and yummy and juicy, and they come to my design house and they're like, wow, that was a fantastic experience. And also being really open to constructive criticism and feedback. Shamisa, my friend here, will literally tell me, look, Pai, your buttonhole is 7 degrees off. It's off key, but just being open to people who I'm selling my garments to and taking that feedback in and really learning from it so that we can grow here locally. And also working on design within itself. I have focused on, marketing, PR, and advertising as well in different ways. And then I've also focused on product management, ensuring that my product has the perfect finishing no matter what it takes, right? So we all know that machinery here and things like that are still from the 80s, And so we're having lots and lots of trouble, just generally speaking. It's a good point, huh? That we have lots of trouble in just things like cutting machines or digitized goods, or how do I make a pattern in 15 minutes as opposed to 2 days? Just time efficiency and things like that. So that's something that I've been working on very strongly with my team to ensure that things like my turnaround time is extremely fast. IT I'll miss. And also we have a showroom. The reason I created the Demoya showroom was because I felt like there was such a lack of support locally for me. I didn't get enough support. I felt like the people that had enough power were supporting China and not supporting Zimbabwe. So I figured, you know what, if I can create a platform where I can work with other designers and even give them a platform, then my job is done. And eventually, I will have my own flagship stores where we can do mass production and everything like that, not only nationally, regionally, but also internationally. Thank you very much.
Can we give Paida a hand one more time? A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of going to Paida's fashion house, and I think it was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had in a while. It was a girls' night out for me, and me and my girlfriends, we went, and there was fashion, there were flowers, people selling different things, massage, different products, but it was really fun, great music, and yeah, I'm really happy that that space exists. So thank you, Paida. And last year, another enjoyable night that I had was when we had collaborations between local designers and John Blase that Shamiso organized. It was upstairs in the North Gallery. It was so great to see people push themselves and different people come together. So up next to present more about her journey is Catherine Rujizo. Can we give her a hand?
I love how I'm still called Catherine. That is my business name, but I am actually Shamiso Catherine Rujizo, so I prefer Shamiso. I prefer my Shona name. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Gosh, we're not lively today. What's going on? It's the weather. Okay. So I attended a women's event this morning. So happy Women's Day to all the women that are here. And they were asking us the question, if you were not afraid, what would you do? So I want you to think about that for as long as I'm going to be speaking about my journey and what we're doing in the fashion space. And then I'm going to ask some questions, because I want to understand who I'm speaking to. And can I just have a show of hands who is in the fashion industry or wants to get into the fashion industry? Okay, so that's a large number. Okay. So, as mentioned, my name is Shamiso Rujidzo, and I am a creative practitioner, as I like to call myself. So I'm not a designer, I'm a businesswoman who's interested in fashion. I've been in this industry since I was 16, and that was a long time ago. So I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm not going to start from where I started, I'm going to start from where I am now. That's why I want you to think about that question that I just asked. So I am the fashion consultant of Haifa. I run Fashion Weekend Zimbabwe. I just opened a design incubator, Duna State, where we train on skills, and we take designers to markets, and we also work with artisans. So it's not just clothing designers. If you use your hands to design something, you sit under our mandate, because it's all about the design sector for us. I do a lot, I wear a lot of hats in the fashion industry. I sit on a board called ACVIS, which is a board that was formed to resuscitate the cotton to clothing sector. The EU, you may not know, have invested some money to work with the government of Zimbabwe to resuscitate the entire chain. So as Pai was saying, long time ago, if you knew about this industry, we were leading, we were booming. Our cotton was, and still is, the best in the world. We traveled to different places. We just went to a research trip in Egypt last year, and all they were talking about was our cotton. So we're trying to resuscitate that. Unfortunately, clothing doesn't work without the cotton. In Zimbabwe anyway, because that's largely the biggest fabric that's called to come from Zimbabwe from buyers around the world. So that's one of the key things that we're trying to do, resuscitate. So we're taking designers to trade shows. We went to 2 trade shows last year, one in Cape Town, one in Madagascar, where we're working with buyers who want to work with the fashion industry of Zimbabwe. But there is a limitation. Our biggest limitation is that we cannot produce the quantities that they want. So when we think about what quantities they want, we're not talking about 200 dresses, we're talking about 5,000 plus dresses. And we're not talking about in 6 months, we're talking about in 6 weeks, just to give you an idea of what's happening globally. So even if we want to meet that, there are a lot of things that we need to do to resuscitate that. So that's just a bit of background of some of the work that I'm doing. So now I'll take you back. This industry is very tough. Whether it's locally, whether it's globally, it's a very cutthroat, difficult industry. And I think I've seen it all. So I started my journey, I went to Australia years ago in 2000. And I actually went to study, but I was also doing some freelance modeling, just to take you through my journey of where I've started and where I am now. So I was working with up-and-coming designers, and that's where I fell in love with local fashion in Perth. And I used to do some freelance modeling for them, and I met a designer called Betty Tran. And she asked me to produce a fashion show. She, like any up-and-coming designer, if you're up-and-coming designers, you know that it's really difficult to do everything. You can't be sewing your clothes, you can't be designing, you can't also be trying to do the marketing and the branding and the fashion shows. It's too much. So she asked me to produce her fashion show, and I think that's where my journey really, really began. I produced her first fashion show, and now she's a powerhouse. You can Google her. She's got stores in Paris. She's just about to open a store in London. She has stores in Perth and in Sydney, and I produced her first fashion show. I love the production part, but through my journey, I learned that that's not really what I'm about. I'm about inspiring and uplifting designers to take their talent a little bit further than they would have anticipated they could go. So I opened a modeling agency in Perth, and some of you already know the story, so sorry if I'm repeating it, but I opened a modeling agency, a boutique modeling agency, because working with Betty Tran and other designers like her, I started to work with a pool of models that couldn't get into the bigger agencies. And these agencies employ thousands and thousands of models, and they have one black Sudanese girl. That is their African model. That is their diverse model. That is what they call diverse. And you see that girl doing all the seasons, all the cycles, and they send her to London, to Paris, and she's the only girl coming out of Australia. So that used to really conflict me, because I had models. I had a Chinese girl who was 6 foot, and I had amazing African girls who were just as beautiful as my pool of models. I had white girls as well. I had black girls. Brunette girls as well. So I started working with these pool of models, and then I had big designers now coming to book these girls because they wanted something fresh. They wanted something new for their lookbooks. So I'd work with Costarella, who is unfortunately leaving the industry. These are Australian designers, but he's been in the industry for a long time. He was booking girls from me. So I ran the agency for a couple of years, but my biggest challenge was that I had a very small pool of models. I had about 200 or so models, where the biggest agency had thousands of models. So if I sent a model to Fashion Week, my commission would be $600 per model, and I'd only get in 10 girls, where they would probably get in 500 girls. Just exaggeration, but just to give you an example. And imagine how much money they would be making. And then a model would be booked and would book a billboard for maybe $10,000 a month that her face is on that billboard. That's her commission. So you can imagine, we come back here, if you've ever been on a billboard, how much are you being paid locally? You're not even getting royalties for your face being up there. So we would be taking our commission off that, but I couldn't compete with those agencies. So I kind of this was my first pivot. I didn't know I was pivoting my first business. But I said, what should I do? Should I open another agency in another state? Or should I come back home and see what's happening with the fashion industry at home? And I had been coming home, but I think I just wasn't that clued in on what was happening to our fashion industry. I remember being in the fashion industry since I was 15 and how it was booming, and how models were being sent. Jonathan Denga, the first supermodel, was being sent all over the world to book shows, and come back home, and that was not happening. So I came home, opened Catherine Rue's agency, and for a couple of months, I just thought to myself, the industry has changed so much. Models are getting paid $50, $10. Some are not being paid at all. Models are not leaving the country, they're just circulating the fashion shows that are happening and probably not getting paid at all, or not even reaching international catwalks. So I decided to take a step back from Catherine Rue's agency, and decided to launch Fashion Weekend Zimbabwe. The reason I wanted to launch a platform was because I also wanted to support local designers. Yes, there was already Fashion Week. Yes, there were other platforms that were happening, but I wanted to connect more with the consumer. So I wanted to launch, there's Sydney Fashion Weekend, there's London Fashion Weekend. I'm sure you went to the home of London Weekend. And I wanted to do the same. It's more about consumers and showcasing designers, local designers' products. Again, I got plunged into working with local designers, and then realized that our designers are very talented in this country, very, very talented. But what next? If you are not able to sell your garments and make a living out of it, what's next for you? How are you going to sustain your brand? What's next? So it was Catherine Rue's, and then I pivoted to Fashion Weekend. Then I realized fashion shows, unfortunately, don't shoot me. Unfortunately, they don't work in this country. Because a fashion show is there to showcase your work to a buyer. So like Pai was saying, we did have buyers at Fashion Weekend. We had very few buyers that were there, but still, all fashion shows should have buyers that are serious to buy your stuff. Fashion shows are not about reporters, sorry, paparazzi, or saying, the model couldn't walk, or people laughing at the model. It's seriously about the designer showcasing their work so that that stuff can be bought. So I started working with Haifa, this was 3 years ago, as the fashion consultant, and I was still doing fashion shows, but now I was unlocking my mind to the possibilities of designers. What's next? What comes after the fashion show? Because you probably spend so much money as a designer on the fashion show, then what? You can't pay your bills. You don't have a bank account. You don't have a buyer. There's nothing going on. Then I learned that, there's a very small pool of designers who have their ducks in a row. And I had a really great meeting with designers a few weeks ago where I was challenging them, and I was saying, please don't get me wrong, but I was saying Zimbabwean designers, I find that a large majority are lazy. And don't hate me for this, let me explain myself. To be a designer takes a lot. That's why I'm saying this industry is really, really tough. you have to brand yourself well. After branding yourself, your clothing has to be quality. It doesn't matter how great you think your talent is, that doesn't cut it. I have to be able to wear your dress after so many washes and it doesn't shrink and it doesn't run. And also, I don't want, when I buy from you, there are 10 other designers who've copied your style. That happens a lot in this country. So you have to brand yourself, you have to have a quality, a quality garment or whatever you're doing, menswear or ladies wear. But then you should be able to sell in quantities. So you have to ask yourself, am I going to survive by just having one client a month or one client every week? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to send my kids to school or send myself to school? So I think when I say designers are lazy, we're thinking of our brands in a very small way. We need to challenge ourselves, to push ourselves, to get our brands to where, for example, Demoyo is, where designers around Africa are. And there's no excuse for us not being able to do that. So I'll get back to that in a second. So after Fashion Weekend, this is where I was saying, what's next for designers? So I decided to open Kusika. So I don't have a presentation, I just have this image behind me. And I wanted to challenge myself to say, okay, I want to do 4 things. 1, help designers and artisans upgrade their skills. Because as I'm sure even Pai will tell you that she obviously has to keep updating her skills. Just because you went to school once or you learned how to pattern make or you learned how to sew, it doesn't mean that you're going to be, it's going to be the same and you're going to be that top quality. There's always going to be someone better than you. So you always have to update your skills. So we wanted to help with skills development and help you sort of be your brand managers because we wanted to take the product outside of Zimbabwe. So there are lots of buyers. I know so many buyers who are dying to work with designers like yourselves. Lots of them who want to work with you, but we don't have our ducks in a row. I am not going to bring another buyer to Zimbabwe if I know that my designers here are not going to be able to meet the quality. Not just the quality, the units. You sit down with the designer, you do the contract, and then when the buyer now wants their things, the excuse is, my tailor. My tailor messed me up. Oh, there's no electricity at home. Oh, I wasn't well this weekend. It doesn't work like that. The global fashion industry is cutthroat. You mess them up one time, it's over for you. These are buyers who are willing to put 50% for your design up front, and then the rest of the 50% when they get their units. But now, if I'm coming to get your units and you're telling me, there was no Zesa this weekend. So that's why I'm saying we need to up our game. I really don't know how that looks like because I'm always talking to designers and I'm always pushing, I'm always stressing. I look at quality, I'm like, what are you doing? I go back to them, fix your quality, fix your quality. It's continuous, it's round and round. So at Kusika, we also do standardization of just quality. So you can bring your product to us, we can take it through quality assurance and tell you what you need to work on. And then we do market access. So as mentioned, we work with buyers, I take product out, I'm working with Diana Oporti right now. If you don't know who she is, you shouldn't be in this industry, go and research her. I'm working with Diana Oporti at the moment, and she's opening a store in Kenya where we will have a Zimbabwean rack. But I'm only taking top designers. I'm not taking designers who are not serious about their brand. So that's really my history and what we're doing with Kusika. Last year I worked with the US Embassy to bring John Ablaza, who's a renowned Filipino designer who works with local materials, and he's doing shows all over the world right now. He is coming back for Haifa. We're going to do another workshop, but it's with the serious intention of taking more product to the world. So that's really what we do. We try to get our designers out. So if you're a designer, I need to go back to my question and say, if you're not afraid, what would you do? Number 1. Number 2, you need to really challenge yourself. If you have a really, really good product, and when I say product, it's because I'm not just speaking to clothing, go back and really make sure that it's not just you who thinks your product is great. It's not your mom, it's not your dad, it's not your neighbor. You actually have a pool of customers who think your product is great. And then upgrade your design from where it is. Make it even better. Everyone has access to internet. Look at what people are doing with accessories around Africa. Look at what people are doing with women's wear and men's wear. Africa is the new black right now. The world is really looking at us for inspiration. For manufacturing, Ethiopia is manufacturing so well right now. I had a meeting with Kisua. If you know Kisua, the owner of Kisua. Kisua is an online store that was founded by a Ghanaian who they now dress Beyonce. And I had a meeting with him about 3 weeks ago, and he was saying, I'm dying to get talent from Zimbabwe, but I struggle with the quality. You upped your game with your product. You found yourself a brand manager, or you came to Kusika, or whoever, or you came to Demoy and asked for the training, and you come and say, I'm serious. This is my quality, this is my product, this is my brand. And I've got people who can help me with manufacturing. Then you're on your way. I'm tired of hearing excuses in the fashion industry. So I think it is possible. We do have challenges, but I think we can rise above those challenges. It just means getting your ducks in a row. Don't try to do too many things at once. Okay, don't try to do all menswear, women's wear, swimwear, everything. Focus on what your brand is. Like Demoya said, she had to go back to corporate wear. If you ask anyone around town, where can I get the best corporate wear? Her. So focus on one thing and do it really well, and brand yourself well. There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram. Take pictures of your product, but you need to go back to the drawing board. So I think when we compare ourselves to the global industry, it's a little bit difficult for us to meet those thousands of units, but I think it's possible to start somewhere, but we really have to get our ducks in a row. And it's a shame that we don't have a body, like a fashion council that can assist us, because we could get that support from a fashion council. But I do still think it's possible. I mean, Taff is going to present just now, and he's going to present on his amazing success in London, and he has a really, really great product. It speaks for itself. I don't need to even touch it. I can just look at it and see quality. I can be sitting in my office in New York. I don't even need to see it. I just know already that's a quality product, and I will order from him, even if he's in Zimbabwe. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much. Quickly, I'm going to pick on someone. Let's see. If you were not afraid, what would you do? I'm gonna pick on you because I like the color of your pants and they match Demoyo's nails. So I'm just gonna ask that one question, then I'll sit down, and then maybe later people, if you're standing up, you can say, "What if you were not afraid, what would you do?" So you can just stand up and quickly say something.
Here's the mic.
You can just stand there. Just quickly, just a snippet. If I was not afraid, I would start my fashion brand today. Example.
Actually, I wouldn't start a fashion brand. I would actually start a photo studio.
There you go. There you go. And I think we're a perfect example that anything is possible. We're not millionaires, but we are going after our fears and trying to make them happen. And we will be millionaires one day.
Can we give Shamiso a big hand clap? All right. Thank you so much, Shamiso, for those wisdom nuggets. Up next, we have Tafadzo Moyo, and he's going to share about his journey to where he is now, but also the highlights from his time at the London Fashion Week.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi. Did you want to use that one? Or which one?
I'm sure I can use this.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you everyone thanks to Shamiso and thanks to Paida for teaching us. I was learning throughout when they were speaking. I'm not really a great public speaker. I was just talking to Paida about it earlier. I'm not a great public speaker. I'm a creative and I enjoy it. So just standing in front of you guys is, it's scary, but I'll try. So my name is Tafadzo Moyo, like it's been said. Some call me Taf the Tailor. Some call me Taf the Tailor. It depends on how you want to call me, or But I'm a fashion designer, and the founder of this brand, that little guy there. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here, but I'll need a bit of help. So, I'll give you a little bit of my background and a little story about Kid Hunter, and I'll give you my experience at the International Fashion Showcase in London. So I started at the Nico Project, which is really here in Zimbabwe, in Masasa. It's a fashion institute for the disabled. So I was lucky to be a part of the whole team. I started in 2015, and actually in 2008 I graduated. So after my graduation, I joined a company called Faithwear as a designer, junior designer. But I had to prove myself, throughout for me to get to the levels that I always wanted to be at. So in up to 2013, then I sort of parted ways with Faithwear because I always wanted to create, like these guys have been saying, a designer's dream is to have their own brand, have their own clothing line. So I always wanted to do that when I was back still in school. So in 2013, I parted ways with Faithwear. Not completely, we still work together, but I started a company called FW Apparel. It's really almost like a franchise for Faithwear, and we do corporate wear. Again, this is what Moyo was saying earlier. Because Zimbabwe has so many challenges, it's very difficult to just try and survive on just a brand. So I had to get into corporate wear. So we're doing uniforms for different companies. We're doing, all these different things just to sort of get by and make a little bit of money to invest into Kid Hunter, which is the dream, right? So Kid Hunter is something that really excites me, and it's really amazing to see it grow gradually. Have you guys sort of appreciate, and you guys coming out to support and all that. So this is the story about Kid Hunter. Kid Hunter is based on a fictitious character fighting through harshest environments with only his sharp mind, and the spear handed down to him from his father. So this guy has these big dreams, and with his big dreams, he's going into the big world to conquer. And conquering is really being able to chase your dreams and being able to get to the level that you wish to get to. So we're currently selling online. Again, the reason why we're only selling online is because there are so many challenges locally. So to be thinking of having a physical store or a couple of physical stores, it's no one wants that nightmare, especially when you're starting out. So I cannot afford to pay rent, to someone for their store, and also being in a space where you're not really guaranteed to say, 5 people are going to come and buy the product. So I decided to create an online store. And I know I've got some guys who are in here, like the night Chapika. I did tell her about the online store initially. And, when we launched this online store, it was not really what it's like today. I'm just giving you my experience, and I'll get into detail. And so that's why, I can't leave some things out, So I got someone from here, very small company, it's actually a company, but it's based in Pretoria, to do my website. But I had a lot of challenges. So I had a lot of challenges with initial store because guys couldn't buy, like guys, because the reason why I created this was to try and reach out to the, not just the Zimbabwean market, but also, the international market, the regional, the international market. So I decided to get onto Shopify. I don't know, do you guys know Shopify? Yeah, so I got a Shopify expert. I approached Shopify and they gave me an expert from India to work on my website. And they gave me this new structure they just created. So this is the new structure, and it's beautiful. I love it. And it works, so thank you. So Kirante was established in 2015, and it's ready to wear. I've got a little, this is the best that I could do. I mean, I thought, it'd be nice to just bring a few garments to show you, instead of just showing you visuals. It'd be nice also for you guys to have a look at the garments. So that's pretty much what we do. It's menswear, ready to wear. It's nothing. Is it haute couture? How do they pronounce it? Yeah. So that's about really what we do, and this is some of the stuff that we've done. I just picked a few pictures from the different collections, and this was in Cape Town. Again, I relate to Shamiso. It's very difficult to show here. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense. Being a part of, we tried. I mean, you know, Danai, we tried Zim Fashion Week, we've tried a lot of different things, and it never worked, But the recognition, at these platforms is much better. I mean, it's the same recognition that you're getting, which is very beautiful, because these guys, they're actually buyers coming out. Guys want serious people, not guys. When she was telling us about her experience with some individual or an organization who took, was it a month to get to you? Well, at least they got to you. But some guys here, they will never get to you. They'll just promise and promise and promise. But these guys are really serious. They'll tell you, okay, we want 100 pairs of those jeans. Have you got the capacity? Well, I've got. So I'll tell them, yes, I've got, and I know that's money, right? But in Zimbabwe, it's very difficult. But you know what? We have to make it work. So that's about what I've done, and these are a couple of shows in South Africa. I just took sort of our Jews a few pictures from that. Then I'll tell you a bit about the International Fashion Showcase. Have you guys heard? I know some of you, but do you guys know about the International Fashion Showcase? How many know? Okay, that's goodish. But so the International Fashion Showcase is an exhibition platform created by the British Council, British Fashion Council, and Mercedes-Benz. First time Mercedes-Benz being supporting the International Fashion Showcase and presenting it in London. So I was very grateful and super happy. I'd never dreamt of, maybe I had, but being in England, I think it happened too fast. Like, I'm telling you guys, I'm being very honest with you. You guys need to understand me. It was such an incredible experience, and it happened very fast. And I'm so grateful to all the organizations that supported me. The National Art Gallery, one of the partners, the British Council, and Mercedes-Benz also, they came through at the press conference. That was amazing as well. So yeah, it's this is the International Fashion Showcase, and I was a part of it. I'll tell you a bit about the experience. So we had a theme, International Fashion Showcase, local, global. That was the theme. And my inspiration, I took it from, I wanted to tell a story. a Zimbabwean story. And this is one of the things that you guys as designers need to try and do always. Be able to tell a story. It's not just about the garments. So I wanted to tell a story, a local story, and tell it to the international market. So I went out there with my little, very humble story of the Harare street vendors. Okay, do you guys really understand what that means? Have you guys been on First Street? Okay, so I went out there onto First Street, and there are very, very educated people on First Street. There are very, very clever people on First Street. There are very, very well-experienced people on First Street. Different sectors. I don't know, I mean, I never got the chance to bump into a fashion designer, but I mean, I know there are pattern makers on First Street. I know there are salesmen on First Street. Actually, a lot of salespeople there. So I wanted to tell this story to the world, to say, you know, we've got all these people. So this was really a celebratory collection, celebrating that Zimbabwean resilience, that regardless of these hardships and these challenges that we're facing, the rough patch that we've been through and still going through, and we're not even seeing the light yet, but hopefully it's going to come. So I really wanted to focus on, do you guys know the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN? So I picked the first goal, which says end poverty in all its forms. So I'm telling you the whole idea behind this presentation. So we've got hardworking people, well-experienced people, and there's high unemployment. That resource, labor, which is very, very important. This is what I was trying to sell to the international market. To say, okay guys, we are going through this rough patch, but we've got these people that have been, I didn't use the word retrenched, but who do not have, there's that high level of unemployment. So if you guys are seeing the gap, as myself, you could take advantage. So that's the story really that I was trying to sell. But I used, okay, I'll show you. So that was my presentation. The pictures are very vague, unfortunately, but it's very simple. I'm not really complicated, like I said, I'm not haute couture. It's a shirt and it's a shirt and a pair of shorts. But the print there is, it's. I also try to play around with the idea of you know, the hunters and gatherers, which trying to link with the whole idea of these guys, you know, really fighting on, the guys on the street really fighting on and trying to make a living out of the different deals they're trying to push. So it's got a print of these guys celebrating, you know, after a big kill. So it's sort of based on the Bushmen celebrating after, you know, a big kill. So that also playing around with the whole idea of the kid hunter, which is, you know, brave hearts never fail. So you have to keep working and working and working until you get to the levels that you're wanting to be at. So, I mean, that was really my presentation. There were nine designers in my category. I'll show you now. There was, so this is the next in line category. There was Peru, Panama, South Africa. I was so happy to see this lady from South Africa because I really, you know, I mean, I was the only, well, it made us two from Africa. But it felt very awkward sometimes, but I was okay with it. I was the only black guy out of the 81 designers all over the world. So it was. Thank you. There was Indonesia. There was. Yeah, I still failed to pronounce that name. It's Kazakh. How do you? You see, this is one of the beauties of being a part of some of these things, because you get to know how to pronounce some of these country names. There was the Netherlands, Uruguay, Switzerland, and there's little Zimbabwe. Thank you. So that was next in line, and I'll tell you something about the next in line. I felt very small, but because we were 9, it wasn't too bad, because this is just the entry, level. There are bigger designers. I'll tell you this. I was so excited thinking, I'm gonna be a part of. I'm gonna get the chance to watch London Fashion Week. But we only got to the entrance, outside taking pictures. I could not walk in because I'm that small. You guys don't get it, but anyways, we'll get to that. Let's get to the next slide. So then there was another category, which is almost in the same space. It was just directly opposite us. And this was Mercedes-Benz designers. I think Mercedes-Benz picked, I think there were 8 designers from wherever, and I just took 3 of them, but there were, I think, 8. And there's nothing special to these guys, really, guys. I mean, I've seen very great designers here. I mean, we've got her. I've been learning. I mean, I didn't really know much about you, but she's amazing. She is amazing. You guys don't get it. Benai, she's amazing. There's a lot of other great designers around, and there's really nothing special about these guys. It's just exposure, and which is something that we don't have here. But we need to fight, our way through to get there. So that's where we are. Next slide. Then we had the group country showcase. This is when guys would come in, for example, us, 8 designers coming from Zimbabwe, just collaborating. Not really menswear designers all the way through, but I mean, there could be a ladies designer, a ladies wear designer, there could be a shoe designer, there could be a bag designer, and just working together and presenting this. Can you imagine if we had gone out there as a team, presenting or working on this idea, this theme, local global? There would be so much depth, right? I mean, Taff could not really, bring the prize home by himself, right? But India managed, because it was a clan from India, Indians. It was a clan. I think they were listen, I'm not trying to make fun of them, but I respect them. They're good at working together. I respect that, And so I think there were 10 Indians, and these are 10 Indian designers. But I know one of the designers came out with the husband and the son. And the son with girlfriends and whatever. So it was more than 10. I think there were 20. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you this. And they managed to bring the prize, to take the prize. So they won. So there's depth in working together, guys. This is also something that I think we need to improve on. We like just working, solo projects, but they don't really work. They don't really work. We need to work together, share ideas. What do you think of this shoe that I'm trying to, design? What do you think of, like Shamiso was saying? I mean, if you think your quality is not as good, I mean, Shamiso is there. She'll tell you, listen, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, and we get somewhere. So that's about the country showcase. So in total, there were about there were just over 81 designers. I'm not sure, not really sure of the exact number, but just over 81 designers from all across the world. I had a very special experience. It was all about learning for me. Like, that's one thing that I really enjoyed. The showcase was good. I enjoyed it, but the learning process was bigger than everything, you know? I met this guy who I called my mentor during my time there. You know, he's Italian, and he's been in England for over 20 years, working with the British Council, and he's a fashion advisor. So his name is Gianluca. Hey, listen, I'm not good with names. But anyways, his name is Gianluca. And he took me to this place because I told him about, you know, the whole idea that I wasn't too happy that I could not watch London Fashion Week. When I left here, I was thinking, you know, oh, first time, I'm gonna watch, you know, one of the biggest shows, you know, but I never got the opportunity. So he said, listen, don't worry, there's a lot of shows happening. You know, there was a show happening called Fashion Scout. I've got friends on Facebook who are in here, and I'm sure you guys are. I was actually wearing this blazer when I went there, and you know, I said one of my the caption there was, I feel like a student, like 10 Diamond again, you know, because I was learning so much. Like, I mean, look at that. Do you know why I took that picture? The makeup. Look at the makeup. But these are things that we don't actually do here. It's just presentation. There's a show. Guys, there's a show. Then it's the runway. Shamiso, I don't know if you went through the process, but if you ask designers, guys, what is the look that you're going for? The makeup. Are there any makeup artists? I mean, are there any makeup artists right now? Do we have any makeup artists right now? Do we? Oh, thank you for attending this. But you know, it's guys, yeah, it's all about clothing. But the accessories, the makeup, there's a lot that you know that you have to play around with, that you have to consider. And these guys before the show, I think they were there, and this is one of he said, Martin Roberts, he's the founder of Fashion Scout. So we had a tour around the Freemason Hall, which I think there were like 5 shows happening. 5 great shows happening. And he's the founder of the whole show. And he was saying, this lady, the owner of this, Jessica, she's one of the greatest makeup artists he's ever met. And so I thought I'll take a picture, and you know, I was just hoping I would get a chance to show you guys, which I'm very happy that I've shown you. So that's the Fashion Scout. The presentation is there, and this is also something that they mentioned. It's not just about ready to wear. Like, you have to add a few other exciting things because it's a show. People don't come out to just watch the stuff that you are selling in the store. They also want, extra, because it's a show. The presentation, like the music. It's not, Rihanna is the popping sound these days, so let me run with that. No, you have to look for new things. It has to be a special experience for if it's a show. So that's about the Fashion Scout exhibition that I attended. And look at that. This was my favorite exhibitions. Like one of my, I think, number one. Luca took me to this place. I'm not good with names. I was only there for like 2 weeks. But it's a lady called Faye Too Good. Just from the invitation, the card, it was special. felt like I could not really, I had to go. We had to go. So I could not miss it. So this lady, she's got a studio like Demoyo. She's got a studio, and this is the presentation. I only got a few pictures to show you, just those 3. But it was, a very nice presentation. And we are used to just the runway or a showroom. But that's not enough. We have to be different. I was just thinking, the most important thing for an exhibition or a show is for people to know, right? To know that this is what's happening with this brand, and to see this is what's happening with this brand. And obviously for some of us, because I really think that these guys have been very helpful. Shamiso was saying it's not about paparazzi, but for me, paparazzi sort of works because they push these guys. I mean, social media, they're always out there. I mean, before I left, I think I was in the paper almost every day for 2 weeks. And the sad thing though, it was the same article, but all different reporters. I could not believe it. So, sorry, just to sidetrack a bit while I'm touching on that. So I said, I don't know if you guys know Gilmore, is the guy that I work with for my PR. I said to Gilmore, I'm not just going to be taking every interview because people want to have an interview. I'm not trying to be sounding big or anything. I'm still very small, trust me. But I said, listen, what is the point of having this interview, take 30 minutes of my time having this interview, and 30 minutes of my time having this interview. Okay, that's 5 interviews by 30 minutes. 1 minutes. That's a lot of, time. But then it's all, okay, sorry, it's Newsday. I'm not saying these are the names, but Newsday, Daily News, The Herald, same day the articles are out. And same picture, same everything. I don't get it. So I said, listen, I'm not going to take, in fact, if people want an interview with me, I'll tell them what I want the world to know about Kid Hunter. And that's just something that you guys can also think about, and that could help you, because these guys are just special. Anyways, that's the Fade Too Good. Sorry. That's about Fade Too Good. And I also had an opportunity to, we had a seminar, and with very incredible, speakers, and these are gurus in the industry. I'll tell you about this one special lady, but that should be the last bit of that. But these are the lessons. I mean, people learn different things. I mean, right now, if we were to, after this this conversation, if we were to ask, just a few people, what did you learn? They'll tell you, I learned this, and that whatever it is that the first person learned, it will be different from, And this is really what I learned. I mean, some people will tell you, that only, but this is what I learned. Maybe it's because I knew some of the stuff that I was told, and it was just like, But tips on social media, a great tool. It's not all about. I'm not even going to post this on the Kid Hunter page that I was doing a presentation. So what? I was doing a presentation. The guy that's following Kid Hunter wants to see clothes. I could take a picture of this and say, we showed this at the presentation. And they'll be like, yeah, well, I love the jacket, right? I love the color. Do you have it in black? Because that's my favorite color. But, if you're going to just show people this, it wouldn't make much sense to them. And these are some of the things that, we need to take seriously. Social media is a very, important part of the business. We have to use it wisely. I remember that night, I went back to the hotel. I deleted most of the pictures on Instagram. I think I only have 9 pictures now, but I had like 30, 40 pictures on Instagram. I deleted them because they didn't make sense, because this is what they said. When, you get onto the Kid Hunter page. This is me saying, they didn't mention Kid Hunter, but when one gets onto the, on your business page, they have to experience that Kid Hunter, vibe. It has to, this is what they're all about. It's not just pictures. It's not just to show people that you were here or whatever, but it has to be an experience. So that's why I deleted some of these pictures, even on Facebook. But you guys need to take it seriously. I know some brands that are really taking it seriously, and most of you here do take it seriously. So I'm going to be sort of copying you guys and learning from you. So that's social media. Presentation skills, that's actually part of that. But there's an issue of lookbooks. For me to be able to showcase at this international fashion showcase platform, it was really because there was nothing special about me, I think, but it was more presentation. And I learned some of these things from, I have to say this, Benai, you're actually one of my inspirations. Yeah, I mean, she presents, I mean, you get onto the House of Stone, page. It's just so, I'm not saying she's not serious with the work, but you believe that she's serious. She knows if she's serious or not. But when you get onto that page, you're like, wow, this is amazing. Even Catherine, she's got a very amazing, I mean, look, do you see that, the Kusika page? I've been to the store. It's amazing. So it's all about presentation. And lookbooks are very key. As a designer, you need to have a very cool lookbook. And do not follow what everyone else is doing. You've got your own sort of presentation, way of doing things. It has to be different. You can't just follow because, Ningi is doing this, I have to follow that. We have to be different. We are creative, right? And we have to be different. So that's about the presentation skills. Then the importance of networking. Sure. That's really major. I mean, it's not like I didn't know, but they explained it differently. I'm one of those guys. I mean, someone sent me a message yesterday. They said, there's in fact, they took a screenshot of what's going on today. What's happening right now, the poster. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, you're sending it to me, but I've got it. He was like, yeah, man, this guy knows me. He's like, do you want me to post this on my page, or you want to remain low-key? But then he laughed, he's like, low-key doesn't really work for you. So, I mean, we need to get out there. Because I'm one of those guys that always used to say, listen, I'm a designer, I'm a creative, I'm just going to do my stuff and people are going to see me, people are going to appreciate my clothing because why do I have to be there, sort of thing. But it's very important. Like right now, I just met her. If I'm wanting corporate wear, which I can't do, I'll take it to her for CMT. That is growth, right? So TAF is not going to turn down, the orders. I'm going to try and work something out with Paida. And that's how it works. I've learned from a lot of different people here. I'm in Tanzania. I've learned from Mr. Chikuko. In fact, I'm wanting to sell some product to Mr. Chikuko. That's part of networking. But if you don't get out there, how are you going to sell? How will you know that Benai's got a store? How will you know about Kusika Designs? Maybe you could argue and say, I'll catch them on Facebook. I'll catch them on Instagram. But it's good to see these people in person and talk to them. Because you also need to understand the sort of people you're working with. It's not just, I know the organization, but you need to know the people behind the organization and get to understand them. Because it's a relationship that you have to build, right? So that's part of that point. Then the magic of collaborations. We spoke about this a bit, but can you guys recognize it's a bit vague, but can you see the picture that's up there? It's vague, it's very blurry. You guys can't tell, but it's a Louis V bag, collaborating with Supreme. Do you guys know Louis Vuitton, obviously? Do you guys know Supreme, a brand called Supreme? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So, so these guys are into skating. And Louis Vuitton, obviously, it's one of those luxurious brands, right? And they're expensive brands. And so Louis Vuitton thought, listen, we want to take advantage of this collaboration and be able to sell to the Supreme market. And Supreme also thinking, listen, we want that Louis Vuitton customer. So they work together for the bags. And this is big right now. It's like that little skater guy is going to look cool carrying a Louis Vuitton bag and branded Supreme, and they've got their board there. So that's some of the things that we learn and the advantages of collaborations. Kid Hunter is a menswear brand, but I've had these questions, like the same question actually. When are you going to have ladies wear? We want ladies wear. But I can't design ladies clothing, right? So I have to collaborate with a ladies wear designer. Then, well, she's there. Thank you. then it's more revenue, right? And that designer also gets something from that. It's not just designing. Collaboration they have to work, for both parties. It's not just it's not one-sided. So that's about collaboration. Then negotiating favorable terms. Hey, that really hit me when I I was just thinking, in most cases, if a company approaches you, they're like, oh, we like your product. Can you do the 2,000 units? Then because you're a young designer and you're very excited about this big order, you go out to a bank. You'll be lucky, maybe not in Zim, but for some people, if you have collateral, you can talk to your dad or whoever and say, listen, there's an order and it's worth this much, but they need a house for me to get money from the bank. And if you've got generous parents, well, I don't have such generous, well, maybe they cannot afford, but there's some people with very generous parents or relatives or whatever. They'll be like, well, it's cool. This is the beginning of everything. So yeah, let's do it. And if you do not produce the quality which Shamiso was speaking about, that's the end of you. So the terms aren't that great. And there's also an issue of pricing. People just want to, it has to be good on their side. And it's never on the other side. So that's sad. But you have to learn to be able to negotiate favorable terms. And the issue of delivering quality. I'm not going to tell you about this. I was in Bulawayo just last week. I had this sort of presentation, and I also managed to have a meeting with one of the stores there. It was good. But they shared with me this experience they've just had with an international designer. And yeah, it's horrible, to say the least. But it's issues of quality. But I got to know about, and I'm thinking, but listen, that brand is great. What are you talking about? But it's not always great. So do not look at yourself, do not undermine yourselves. You guys are great, but you need to work on the quality. Great designers. Someone was saying there's a lot of great designers working for retail stores, and there's a lot of shitty designers, working, with good brands, with very successful brands. It's all about that business acumen. So it's not just about design. It's also about learning the business side of things. How do I get this client? How do I market? How do I employ? Because sometimes it's good to say I've got 40 tailors, but you're paying those 40 tailors every Friday. And if you don't pay them, it's chaos. And you don't want that. But you need to, if you don't have the time to learn, maybe look for an advisor. She's here. And I'm not saying these are cheap advisors, but you can try and, get your way in. Chamiso, I know you, please. I'll pay you this much. And, I'll pay you half this month. I'll pay you you know what I mean? So it's all about that. And the last thing is being able to tell a story. This is big, guys. Telling a story. You need to be able to tell a story. My story is simple. I don't have, maybe, it's easier when you're selling a story, because there's a lot of great designers out there, and there's a lot of, clothing manufacturers out there. In China, there are not that many designers. I think there are more manufacturers than designers. And what they'll do, they'll see a House of Stone garment online, and they just copy and paste. And you think, this is a special print. There's no way they'll do this. But Chinese, those people are very smart. They'll copy and paste just the same thing, and labeling. We can't do woven labels here. They'll do it. And they'll make it more authentic than you, which is sad. So we need to be able to sell that story first. But mine is a bit different. Impossible is nothing. That's not mine. That's an Adidas commercial. They're using that phrase. Mine is Braveheart. Well, Kid Hunters is Brave Hearts Never Fail. Right? You have a dream. You wanted to do car design, or wanted to fly an aeroplane. Whatever it is that you wanted to do, go for it. Brave Hearts Never Fail. Thank you very much, guys, for
Thank you so much, Tafazwa. I'm just going to ask the panelists a few questions. You all have had international and obviously local experience. When you step out of Zimbabwe, or when you've worked outside of Zimbabwe, have you felt pressure to become more African, whatever that means? Have you felt pressure to exhibit, portray, or to make a spectacle of whatever it is to be African? Anyone can answer that.
Well, I think I have, just from my time in the UK, I really felt like I'd sort of let myself down a bit, because I didn't have much clothing that showed where I was coming from. So there is always pressure, because there's a lot of, this is why we're saying we need to tell our stories, always, because if you are able to tell that African story, people will respect you, because not one person, the Europeans cannot really tell that African story, though they really wanting to experience that, to know about Africa. So it's always good for us to have these stories to tell from Africa and be proud about it. I remember the one time when I was wearing my cheetah print, and everyone's like, wow, that shirt is so cool. Because they also wanted to relate, to sort of understand where you're coming from, and what really gets you going, through that. So I think there is a bit of pressure in that.
I think the pressure for me personally is, yes, to be more African, but to be more Zimbabwean. I remember going to Madagascar last year and walking around all the exhibitions. And all the clothing designers had a unique story of their fabrics, of their history from their country. And I just felt so lonely in that space because I wasn't talking about the fabrics that we have in Zimbabwe. I wasn't talking about the history because we don't know our clothing history. I wasn't talking about the unique piece that I was showcasing from Zimbabwean designers that was 100% Zimbabwean. Yes, I had a few cotton pieces, but I wanted to dive in and say, and this comes from somewhere from our history, and I know it is there, but I think it's more about telling the Zimbabwean story through our clothing. What is that? I think we've been talking about it for years, but what really is it? I think South Africa tells their story so well. Swaziland tells their story so well. Nigeria, Ghana. What is our clothing identity that when we are in a space with other Africans, even in Europe, even in the US, who is Zimbabwe?
You said it well.
So yes, it is Africa's time. We know this in the visual art world, we know this in the fashion world, we are seeing it economically as the black middle class is rising on the continent. And yet, in some ways, some people may say we find ourselves still having to go to the so-called creative centers, which are all Western or Eurocentric. Some people may say that it's for validation, and some people may say, well, that's just how the world is. There's a world hegemony. Shamiso, you were in Australia. Paida, you were London, Paris, New York, these centers of the creative world. You were just in London. Is it validation? Or is this just a necessary, I don't want to say evil, and also, what are the upcoming centers on the continent that we can bounce off on? Because obviously, the more proximity you have to a center, somehow, some way, the more exposure you get.
Can you simplify that question just a bit here?
I don't think it's validation. I mean, okay, maybe it is in a way because these are the buying countries. So, we kind of, as Africans, we don't buy our own local stuff. So we can't really get that validation from within our own continent. So like what Taff was saying, when his fabric was, they were asking him about his fabric and about his stuff, it almost did feel like a validation in a way because that industry, the global industry is booming and they're buying. So when someone comes to you and say they want 5,000 units of that fabric, you do really feel like, yes, my stuff can sell. Yes, I've got something. But rarely do we go to, I don't know, Zambia and have someone say that they want 5,000 units of that fabric. So I guess it's a validation in a way because they're the global are the consumers of African clothing. I hope I answered that.
No, not much to add to that, just Shami. So I just think us as Zimbabwe need to have a little more faith in ourselves, just in terms of design, we should have more confidence within ourselves, really. And I feel like we lack some self-esteem, just generally speaking.
Yeah, it goes back to my point when I was saying we need to find who we are in our clothing. I don't know why we're so scared to dive in and find who we are. We're always trying to be like every other country. We're trying to design like South Africans. We're trying to design like other countries. We have amazing stuff that we can say is our identity. So I don't know if that answers that question, but that just jumps on what you're saying, I think.